What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today I'm giving you my way too early 2022 NFL mock draft, and I cannot preface way too early enough. I have not gone as in-depth with, film studying a lot of these prospects. Basically what I've seen of these guys is what I saw on tape from watching prospects for this year's draft and then watching these guys play in the college football season just as like a football fan. So a lot will change, and I will do periodic mock drafts throughout the NFL season and throughout the next coming year, but there is going to be a lot of fluidity and, there's going to be a lot of changes from this video moving forward. But nonetheless, hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, please hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, like sports content, please consider subscribing for more of it. And let me know down in the comment section, what did you think of your team's 2021 NFL draft? What needs are still there? And then give me a couple of names you're excited to see this upcoming college football season. I'm eager to see who you're keeping your eye on as a guy who could climb up the board, solidify their spot at the top, sleeper, whatever the case may be. But without further ado, I also want to make mention I'm using the Pro Football Network's draft simulator. It is the only one that's really up and running, so this is their draft order. This is not how I would see it playing out. I'm also going to have a rankings video, an NFL power rankings video coming out in the next week or so you'll get a feel for where I could potentially see the draft order playing out. But that's not necessarily a direct correlation, but regardless, in this website and in this draft simulator, the Lions hold the number one pick. And if that's the case, I think you got to go Spencer Rattler. You can get rid of Jared Goff after next season for just $10 million. So $10 million in dead money, but that compared to what, $35-40 million on his salary, you take that. And this team put together a really nice foundation around him. They got Penei Sewell. They drafted a couple of interior guys like Aleem McNeil and Levi Onwuzurike. They get a corner and Ifeatu Melifonwu. Like a lot of what this team did in its draft. Also, Amon-Ra St. Brown, talked about him a lot in my draft tier ranking video. If you missed that, definitely encourage you to go check it out. Regardless, Rattler has this Mahomes-like ability about him where he just makes throws where you're like, how can the human body do that? So that wow factor easily solidifies him as like a top half of the first round type of guy. Sometimes he does a little too much and he can make some mistakes, especially early on last year at Oklahoma. Like I remember the Sooners getting off to a really slow start. Some of it was, turnovers from Spencer Rattler, kind of just making silly mistakes. But, if this is the case and the Lions hold the number one pick, Spencer Rattler makes a ton of sense. You already started to build that foundation around him, give him a more favorable spot to have some success. Not necessarily immediately, but early on. And speaking of that foundation, I think this is a big reason why I would see in this world Kayvon Thibodeaux being the pick for the Houston Texans. One, they took Davis Mills in the third round, which if Davis Mills is what we think he might be, a big project, I wouldn't let him prevent you from taking Sam Howell or any other QBs that you might like here at 2. The way I've been thinking about it, though, is ideally Mills isn't going to play until the end of this upcoming season, a la, Drew Lock, his rookie year with Denver. And then you'll use the 2022-2023 NFL season, which sounds weird to say, as his full year to evaluate him. Or you could even say Jalen Hurts last year, very similar to what I'm describing. Also, if you take quarterback here, like this roster is still in disarray. They drafted 4 or 5 guys this past draft. And it's just a bunch of one-year contracts. You're hoping to get some compensatory picks, have them weigh into that equation so you can get some extra thirds and fourths and mid-round value. If you take a quarterback here, they're walking into probably the still worst roster in the NFL. So I would rather go Kayvon Thibodeaux. I don't know what the 2023 quarterback class looks like, and it is a risk waiting off to another year. But by the time the 2022 draft is around, you'll have an idea of a couple of names, right? Kind of like this year. We're talking about Spencer Rattler. We're talking about Sam Howell. We're talking about Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, yada, yada, yada. So I think you go get a once-in-a-generation type of dude. Like this guy is just a freak, super athletic, has good size, and he has good strength to go with it. I mean, this is a complete pass rusher. And it'd be interesting enough, if this happens, it'd be 3 years in a row, right? Oregon has a player go in the top 7. Justin Herbert a couple of years ago, Penei Sewell this past draft, and now Kayvon Thibodeaux at 3 very different positions. 3 of the most important positions in football, but 3 very different positions. Oregon is not one of these programs that produces X position, man. It's just they do it all randomly. Those have studs at different spots. Regardless, let me get off that soapbox and move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this was one of the tougher ones to pick because At number 3, they could go Derek Stingley, who's probably the best player available, and Pro Football Network would agree. But man, it's already a crowded wide receiver room. So instead, I'm going to go offensive line. I know they took Walker Little. They're thinking the future Cam Robinson replacement, but Jawan Taylor allowed the most sacks of anybody last year. They're also looking to get rid of Andrew Norwell, so Evan Neal makes some sense. He could be a right tackle replacement who could play guard. Maybe you're moving Walker Little to right tackle. Neal has plenty of experience playing at left. And this is just the next power offensive lineman to come out of Alabama. So these are just more so names to keep your eyes on throughout the year, but I feel like Neal could help boost up that offensive line because there's not a whole lot of other holes left on that roster really in Jacksonville. On to the Philadelphia Eagles. If this happens, this is perfect. Derek Stingley Jr. gives you that number 1 corner this team desperately needs. This is, reminiscent of Patrick Peterson coming out of LSU. This guy is just a stud. He does it all. If he can stay healthy, play a full college football season, you're going to see it. This guy's unbelievable. And then we get to the Cincinnati Bengals, and another tough one to judge because I think they need to go edge, but they could certainly go offensive line, still working at that position. Ultimately, what I think I'm going to decide to do is a potential Riley Reef replacement or a left tackle that kicks Jonah Williams in a guard where I think he would be better. I think he can be a fine tackle. I think he could be a better guard. I'll go Charles Cross. And also, these rankings are not going to be the end-all be-all. This, for example, if you want to go see a 2022 early mock draft, Todd McShay did one. And I'm trying to think of the edge rusher from Clemson. He had at the end of the first round. They had it at, Xavier Thomas, 302nd player in the draft. So, obviously, again, this is very fluid. But regardless, Cross could be that left tackle of the future. You didn't get Sewell. Now you have an opportunity to get a guy that might be as good. We'll see throughout the upcoming year how he's compared to a guy like Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater. On to the Jets. The one position they didn't really address and they still need to get better at is edge. I'm going to go Zach Harrison. It's just, Ohio State. They produce these edge guys, high level. He's got good size. I think the production's going to be there. It's going to be a good team, so that plays into it. And this in corner, which, spoiler, we're going to get to that with the Jets. But the two spots that I think they didn't get better. Instead, it was a very offensive-heavy draft. The top half of 2021's draft, rightfully so, giving weapons and protection to Zach Wilson. Now they're a couple of defensive upgrades away from being serious playoff contenders. Then we get to the Giants, and don't know which one's which one's the Giants pick versus which one's the one from the Bears and part of the Justin Fields trade. Regardless, it's a top 10 pick. And in this spot, that clearly means Daniel Jones didn't work out, so you're drafting his replacement. And I would love Sam Howell. They would need to get a new offensive coordinator, I think, in my opinion. Jason Garrett probably isn't the guy that Sam Howell best matches with. This guy wants to stretch the field and has a huge arm. I'm not entirely sure I saw that from Garrett as a play caller last year. I'm also interested to see how he uses Kadarius Toney, not typically position or wide receiver type that he utilizes well. Anyways, Howell, man, if they got a new OC and brought him in, big plays are waiting to happen with the likes of Darius Slayton, Kadarius Toney, who I just mentioned, Kenny Golladay, who's a downfield monster, wins those 50-50 jump balls. I would love this. This is an opportunity where this team, especially here and with another top 10 pick, they're a QB away. So definitely keep your eyes on the Giants going QB next year, especially if the Daniel Jones experiment does not work out. Then we get to the Atlanta Falcons. I really like Kyle Hamilton here. They took Richie Grant, and I think at that point, maybe there's some other positions that you didn't prioritize this year that are more valuable, right? Like edge has a bigger impact on the game. Also, they're just more expensive players. So I'm going to go Drake Jackson. Again, I haven't really totally scouted, especially edge is a tough one I really want to watch a lot of tape on. But Drake Jackson, somebody who's getting a lot of buzz. And they didn't draft an edge player until the 5th round this year, which feels like them ignoring a problem. And Dean Pease is a guy who wants to blitz a lot. So having edge rushers who can win would certainly help in that defensive philosophy. So edge here, Drake Jackson, I think makes some sense. Could definitely be safety. And then we get to the Denver Broncos, and I'm basing this draft off the idea that Aaron Rodgers is not under center. Because if Aaron Rodgers is under center, they're picking 29th or lower. Like, they're not picking 9th. So because Aaron Rodgers is not currently on the roster, let's go out there and give him Keaton Slovis. I have a hard time trusting these USC quarterbacks, right? Because they always fit the bill. They look like what you want in an NFL QB. Sam Darnold, in a lot of ways, has been the best one. At least he has the most highlight, flashy plays. Maybe you could say Mark Sanchez over the last decade or so. from past Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer put together a pretty decent career, but even that wasn't as great as we kind of had thought about if you were alive and a big college football NFL fan at the time. But Slovis has those tools, and it'll come down to this college football season. If he doesn't play well and if USC underperforms again, I could see him falling all the way to like round 3. Really could. But if this team plays well, he could ride the hype into this top 10 range. And if you're Denver, you have Teddy Bridgewater, Teddy Two Gloves making $3 million. You're not really worried about that. And again, if you're picking top 9 again, it means Drew Lock or Teddy B wasn't good enough. So go out there and find a potential replacement. Again, basing this off of them not having Aaron Rodgers. Then we get to the next pick for the Giants. And I'm going to go interior offensive lineman. Kenyon Green is a dominant run blocker, and I really do like him for the Giants. It's also Soldiers coming back. You already have Andrew Thomas. Matt Pert looks to be a pretty good player. I think long term, I think especially next year, you can cut Solder, and the penalty is smaller than his base salary, so you can save some money. Pert's your long-term right tackle, and then you have Andrew Thomas at left. They're still trying to iron out the interior, so I think Green goes a long way trying to improve that unit. And then here we go. This is the pick I was so excited to make. Malik Willis. For those who don't know, I live in Virginia, so Liberty, a school I'm familiar with. Actually used to be in the conference of my alma mater, Longwood, the Big South. So I know what Liberty is, and also in and around the area, I am surrounded by Washington football team fans. This feels like such a fun storyline that could potentially happen. And Ron Rivera has said he wants to build this team and have a complete roster before he goes out there and gets his quarterback. Dude, Malik Willis has the athletic capabilities, different type of runner than I think Cam Newton was, but has that athletic mold that we obviously know and we can connect to Ron Rivera. But this guy can make some throws. Go watch his tape. If you haven't heard of Liberty, go out there and watch a little bit of what you can from Malik Willis, and then keep your eye out on this college football season. This is also going to be a good test, because if Willis doesn't look good this upcoming year, the narrative's going to be you couldn't handle the pressure, big spotlight, could have been a first-round pick, couldn't handle it, therefore he falls. And then he becomes like next year's Kellen Mond, or something like that, a younger Kellen Mond. Though Mond is pretty young. Regardless, Willis has some top 10 potential. I could definitely see a world where, kind of like how we didn't expect Zach Wilson to leapfrog Justin Fields, maybe he leapfrogs Rattler or Sam Howell. Don't know if he gets to be number 1 in the class, but in some people's board, I could see him climbing as high as QB2. Has just those traits you can't teach. Again, he plays at a small conference and in a smaller school, so it'll be interesting to see how NFL teams grade him and evaluate him. But him with Washington, they're QB away. And man, that would be a really fun fit. Then we get to the Raiders. Really thought about QB here. And there was one QB I didn't get to put in this when I was mocking up. Tyler Show. He was a backup for Justin Herbert at Oregon. And he's kind of a name that you may not seen a whole lot of these early mocks or hear a whole lot about. But again, back up to Justin Herbert, and now he's playing in this, Texas Tech pro-style offense, big numbers waiting to come. He could easily work his way into the first round. He could be, without a doubt, this year's Mac Jones. No doubt in my mind. Or maybe even a more successful first-round lock in Kyle Trask, because there were conversations this year where Trask might have earned his way into the late first-round conversation. Almost did it anyways. There were people saying he still could. But regardless, I could see him sneaking in the first round. What I was really originally saying, the Raiders could definitely go QB. If you're picking top 12, it might be time to move on from Derek Carr. Try to restart the roster with a QB on a rookie contract, They like to spend money in weird areas, but this almost certainly feels like a spot where I think Gruden is committed to Carr. And I really wanted to go with a reach here, but I think Justin Ross is a wide receiver they just don't have. They moved on from Tyrell Williams, so now they're kind of lacking that big body wide receiver. And Justin Ross, 6'4", easily could be wide receiver 1 next year. Again, corners and wide receivers, and then also edge, like I said earlier. Those are guys I have to watch tape. I love watching wide receivers and corners. Those are my favorite positions to evaluate and watch tape on. But man, Justin Ross just has that highlight ability and that big play of nature about him. Has the frame this team is looking for. And then if they have Ross, they can use him as an X. I think they need to use Henry Ruggs and his speed as a field stretcher, which will open up things in the intermediate areas of the field, 10 to 19 yards, where Ross can really dominate. Man, I would love to see him end up in Las Vegas, which is where the draft is actually being held in 2022, which will be a lot of fun. And then I think best player available here. I don't know if Kyle Hamilton stays on the board till 13, at least as of right now. Like if the draft were today, I doubt it. But the knock on this is he is a box around the line of scrimmage safety. They already have that in Jeremy Chin. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I see Kyle Hamilton as someone who can do it all. So that's why I don't think he's on the board at 13. He's not a safety that does one thing really well and is okay at others. He's great at everything. So I think Hamilton as a deep safety, you can use him around the line of scrimmage. Maybe you just convert Jeremy Chin to straight up linebacker. I don't know. But Hamilton's too good a value here to pass up. Then we get to the Minnesota Vikings. And I know they had a couple of edge rushers they took on days 2 and 3, especially Janarius Robinson. I'm intrigued by, a really long guy. But outside of Danielle Hunter, this team has drafted so many mid-round edge guys that haven't panned out. And given where this roster is, there's not a whole lot of holes. They really did a great job addressing the offensive line. I think eventually this team has to understand if you're going to get elite top-end edge rush help, it's in the first round. And in this case, George Karlaftis, I think is how you say his name. Not 100% sure on that. Edge rusher out of Purdue, I think would be a fantastic fit opposite of Danielle Hunter, or maybe even a Danielle Hunter replacement, and this team could take the Colts route and double up on edge. But I'm hoping, given how good this roster is, they're going to put together that edge needs to be first-round priority. They could certainly also go corner, though I think Jeff Gladney going to take that second-year leap this upcoming season. I also think that Cameron Dantzler is already a fantastic player. They bring back Mackenzie Alexander. You have Pat Pete on a one-year deal. So long-term, maybe they're looking for a nickel guy, but I think edge is the priority here. Moving on to the Arizona Cardinals. Didn't get a corner this year. Here we go. The drafts are already starting. This and then one more. Once we get to the Cleveland Browns, I'm just going to stick with it. Eventually, they're going to draft one of these guys. Kaiir Elam has everything you want in a corner, plays at a Power 5 school, and a school that really has done a good job becoming a corner powerhouse. So feels like it makes a ton of sense, but because it makes some sense, I don't know if Arizona does it. Also, big year for Cliff Kingsbury. I'm thinking about making a video about my top 5 coaches, maybe top 10 coaches in the hot seat. And then maybe another accompanying video like offensive and defensive coordinators who are well positioned for head coaching jobs. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested to see my thoughts on potential coordinators making that head coaching job leap, or head coaches who we could definitely see get fired during or after this upcoming year. Then we get to my team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. You knew I was doing it. Before we got underway, you knew I was going quarterback. In my opinion, best one available, Desmond Ridder. Really good athlete. Sometimes feels like he is too quick to use his legs, which I think that's just more of a mental thing. Also, Cincinnati not known for being a powerhouse school with offensive linemen, protecting him at a high level. But I'm intrigued by what Ridder could become, and he's going to be a guy who's probably playing in a Senior Bowl next year. So he has his senior year at Cincy and then also the Senior Bowl as a couple of opportunities to really shine. And here in the top 16, I think he could certainly solidify his position in the top half of round 1. New England Patriots are next. I think Chris Olave makes some sense. They can move on from Kendrick Bourne for a pretty minimal expense. I think they would actually save him some money, not much, but Chris Olave is the polished route runner, and then you have Nelson Aguilar as the field stretcher, and then you still have the 2 tight ends, obviously, and you want to run the football. I think it's a really good fit, and assuming it's Mac Jones, this would be a really fun guy to help make the game easier for Mac Jones, get open at a high rate. Next up, the Chargers. Another tough one to pinned down. I thought about Christian Harris here. They could definitely get better at linebacker. But I decided to go edge, Aiden Hutchinson. McShay had him in his top 10. Again, I have to wait and see. But Hutchinson coming from a Power 5 school, and from what I saw while I was watching Kwity Paye, I like what I saw just generally watching as a football fan. Michigan's done a good job producing these edge guys. And I think he fits in that 3-4, and I think he could be the guy opposite of Uchenna Nwosu. I know they took Chris Rumph the second, but you're banking on him gaining weight and getting stronger. Here you could just take Hutchinson and have an answer at that position potentially. So, especially with them taking Asante Samuel Jr., kind of took corner off the board for me. So I think Hutchinson makes a ton of sense. On to America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to go to the offensive side. I know they have a lot of playmakers. Last year, the contract for Michael Gallup, and maybe instead of trying to replace his production with a wide receiver in the first round, they go out there and get a tight end. Jalen Weidemeyer, right now looks like the number 1 tight end in this class. Things can change. We thought it was going to be Pat Freiermuth in the 2021 class, and then Kyle Pitts told him to hold his beer, put on the season that he did. Weidemeyer, right now, first round type of tight end. Maybe there's another guy who emerged into that class. And again, maybe you replace Michael Gallup's production with, instead of a wide receiver who you can replace later on in the draft class, it's going to be another good wide receiver class. Maybe not as good as the last 2 years, but still good. I think you can find value later on, and then you throw Weidermeyer into the mix and get a pass catching option at the tight end spot that you just don't really have right now. Back to the Philadelphia Eagles. So earlier, reminder, we went corner with Derek Stingley Jr., and I'm not done going secondary. They have Anthony Harris this year, but Bubba Bolden Jr., especially as a around the line of scrimmage safety, forced 4 forced fumbles last year at Miami. Good young player, really like what he could be, and this team desperately needs safety. So you get Stingley, you get Bolden. They drafted a couple of interior guys. Edge could certainly be in play here. Could also be looking for another wide receiver, but I think you look at this wide receiver class, I think there's going to be, especially considering this is assuming their pick here at 4, they're going to be picking the top of round 2, which, you know, that seems to be a sweet spot to get good value for wide receivers, not taking them too early. And there's going to be a couple of these guys who I don't have going in the first round. So I think that makes sense for Philadelphia. On to the Tennessee Titans. The fall stops for Christian Harris. You have Jaylen Brown just on the 1-year deal. You have Rashad Evans, but you know the fact they brought Brown back kind of signals to me Evans isn't ready. Maybe he takes that leap this upcoming year. And also the concern might be, so another Alabama linebacker because Evans didn't work out. Harris, I think, is a little different, and I think there's not a whole lot of needs really left on that defense. But Harris, at least as of right now, feels like a top 10 guy in a lot of people's eyes. But obviously that could change. On to the Indianapolis Colts. They have played this game of chicken, ignored the offensive line, and maybe just because they're so good from left guard to right tackle, they have like plus to elite level players at those spots. Maybe they're just going to roll out with Sam Tevi and be like, yeah, whatever. You know, he's not good, but everyone else is fantastic. And maybe they'll, have the running back help out and the pass blocking setup, use tight ends. They have a ton of them. Maybe they'll chip. I don't know. Maybe they're hitting up Russell Okung right now. I don't have an answer for you. But assuming Sam Tevi plays like Sam Tevi has played over the last 4 years, I think they're going to want to tackle. So Zion Nelson, a guy who could easily go top 10, really strong dude, really good pass blocker. I think he fits well there at left tackle. Back to the Jets. So again, reminder, said Zach Harrison felt like edge and corner were the two positions they didn't address in this past draft. Well, we're going to take care of that. It took Zach Harrison. Now they're going to go get it. Josh Jobe out of Alabama. I think, what was he, like 60-something over here? That's way too low. This guy's a first-round type of corner waiting to be taken. So the Jets get their two biggest needs, get a couple of good defensive upgrades, and then now we can start seriously considering them a year after this draft, if it played out like this, as playoff contenders. Next to the New Orleans Saints. I'm not entirely sure Jameis Winston works out, and I'm just going to say it doesn't. And I'm also going to say they're probably not picking 24th if Jameis doesn't work out. If he doesn't play well, they have a good roster, I suppose. So they're probably around this Pittsburgh to New England Chargers area, give or take. So I guess 24 is not too far off, but that feels like on the lower end. Matt Corral from Ole Miss, man. He had a lot of weapons this past year, especially like Elijah Moore. And he has that Lane Kiffin beneficiary. Kiffin's an offensive juggernaut. Knows how to create big plays, inflates offensive numbers. And Corral could have those numbers boost him into the first-round conversation. Again, thought about show here we talked about earlier on in the video. But Corral, I think, especially if we can not only see the stats, but a couple of big throws. If this team can knock off, say, a top 10 team, they're playing in the SEC, they're going to have some chances. If he can win a few big games and really stand out in those games, give something that scouts and analysts and all of us in the media can hold on to and say, yep, that guy has potential. He has shown flashes. First round. I think Sean Payton might take the chance on him at 24. So earlier I said, corner for the Cardinals. I mocked it so many times in 2021 mocks. And for me, it was Christian Barmore, IDL for the Browns. And I'm going to stick to it. DeMarvin Leal, right now, the best interior pass rusher in this class, just an absolute monster. Obviously, they've moved on from Sheldon Richardson. Maybe a year later, they can get his replacement. And again, Leal next to Myles Garrett. Oh my goodness, that's crazy. And then they obviously still could use edge because Jadeveon Clowney's on a 1-year contract, as is Takk McKinley. So maybe some of these guys, Brenton Cox, could be a good fit, among others, including the Clemson Xavier Thomas, who I showed earlier. So it could definitely be edge, but I really want this team to get an interior pass rusher, I guess. On to the Miami Dolphins. Here at 26, I feel like it's an okay spot to take running back. Also, this is such a complete roster. Isaiah Spiller, 5.5 yards per carry at A&M last year. Dude's a stud. Really like that pick there for Miami. Helps try to complete that offense. Then we get to the Baltimore Ravens. They just signed Alejandro Villanueva, but that feels like a Band-Aid. It's a 2-year contract, actually, but I think they might be able to get out of it after 1 year. Also, not a whole lot of needs left. Linebacking core looks solid. Took a couple of edge players this past draft. Took a couple of wide receivers. Rashad Walker might be your best bet. They also took Ben Cleveland as a guard. Maybe they're looking center here. I could see that. But I just like Walker as a potential Villanueva long-term replacement. Maybe not even immediately. Maybe Villanueva's still the right tackle, and then Walker steps in after that. Another pick for the Detroit Lions. And here I'm going to give them a wide receiver. A lot of people were knocking them, waiting to take wide receiver, but then they got a really good one in Amon-Ra St. Brown. Let's go John Mitchie III, the next Alabama wide receiver, ready to step up. Even when Waddle got hurt, Mitchie III had some good production. You throw him on the outside. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has inside-out versatility. You're starting to build that wide receiver room really well around your now quarterback, number 1 pick, Spencer Rattler. A few more picks to go. Green Bay Packers, again tough because, did they trade Aaron Rodgers? Did Jordan Love play okay? Because if he didn't, they're probably not picking 29. This is, if Love doesn't play well, you could switch them in Denver with the snap of a finger, though. Especially if they make that trade and get Patrick Surtain. I'm a big Jordan Love fan. Not to the extent I liked Aaron Rodgers, but still think that team can be good and maybe here around the 20s-ish. But maybe quarterback, this is show. Maybe, I don't know about 7 QBs in the first round, though. I'm going to give them a linebacker. Feels like a spot they could continue to improve, especially just off-ball stand-up linebackers, less of the pass rushers, more of those interior guys. Ventrell Miller has the making and the off-ball zone coverage skills that I think could make him a first-round pick. On to the Bills, and I have actually a theory. I was thinking about this while I was at the gym today. The Jags take ETN at 25, and Urban Meyer says we're going to use him in a lot of different ways, kind of like how he uses those gadgety wide receivers and running back roles. Instead, he's going to use a running back and gadgety wide receiver-ish spots. Maybe they felt the need to take him at 25 as opposed to 33 because we heard, the Bills front office was interested in taking a running back, especially a guy they didn't have in the room, the big play guy like Travis Etienne. So maybe that caused the Jags to pull the trigger at 25 instead. But here, let's give the Bills a running back. Breece Hall. It depends. I like Singletary and I like Zach Moss, especially as a duo. I think they complement each other well, and I think there is success to be had. But this is the year to find out, right? They have a good offensive line. Like, those two need to put together some good production. And if they don't, running back in the first round with that good of a roster, I think makes total sense for the Bills. 2 more picks. Ryan Jensen's a impending free agent, and as I was trying to find picks here for Tampa, could be wide receiver, but they got Jalen Darden at a really good spot last year. I think he could be a fine Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson replacement to any one of those 3. I think they keep Godwin around long term, so I think an opportunity to save money and get cheaper somewhere, why not do it at a position that isn't highly valued in a lot of people's eyes? So just use a first-round pick for a nearly complete roster and Tyler Linderbaum and just replace Ryan Jensen as opposed to paying him $8, $10, $12 million. You just saw Frank Ragnow making, 13 and a half. Whew. Do you want to pay Jensen that much money when you have, a lot of cap restraints and restrictions everywhere else? Probably not. So Linderbaum, I think, makes some sense. And the final pick, the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll give them Garrett Wilson. I am a little bit worried about Wilson. I feel like he is super reliant on Chris Olave being the number 1 and him being the focus of opposing defenses. But this upcoming year could totally change that rhetoric. I do like Wilson. He had some big moments last year. But that is my way too early 2022 NFL mock draft. Comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. Tell me where I'm wrong. Who do I have too high? Who am I not watching and not paying and giving enough credit to? Who could be first-round picks next year? Also coming away some college football players I should be watching and maybe put towards the top of my board and who to scout next college football season. But hopefully you all enjoyed. If you did, please hit that like button. It would mean the world to me. And if you're new to the channel, love sports content, please consider subscribing for some more coming your way. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.
generation that remembers Tamagotchis.